Please see the first video on slavery before viewing this one. God commanded Israel to not treat slaves harshly, and most were to be let go at the Sabbath year, that is, the seventh year. And understanding figures of speech in respect of verses stating slaves forever, the person was to be let go in the year of Jubilee, the 50th year. Exodus 21:20 through 27. If a man beats his male or female servant with a rod, so that he dies under his hand, he shall surely be punished. Notwithstanding, if he remains alive a day or two, he shall be punished, for he is his property. If a man strikes the eye of his male or female servant and destroys it, he shall let him go free for the sake of his eye. And if he knocks out the tooth of his male or female servant, he shall let him go free for the sake of his tooth. Leviticus 25:46. But regarding your brethren, the children of Israel, you shall not rule over one with rigor. The Bible restricted the master's power over the slave. See Exodus 21:20. The Bible also says the slave was a member of the master's household. Leviticus 22:11. Being a member of the household, you know you're to be treated much better than, as we know, historical American slavery and slavery in other countries. The slave was required to rest on the Sabbath. Man, how terrible it was to have a day off being a slave. The slave was required to participate in religious observances. Genesis 17:13, Exodus 12:44, Leviticus 22:11. You have to think about this from God's perspective to see how beneficial it was to them to observe God's law. The servitude of a Hebrew debt slave was limited to 6 years. See Exodus 21:2 and Deuteronomy 15:12 for that. When a slave was freed, he was to receive gifts that enabled him to survive economically. Deuteronomy 15, verse 11. For the poor will never cease from the land, therefore I command you, saying, you shall open your hand wide to your brother, to your poor and your needy, in your land. If your brother, a Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, is sold to you and serves you 6 years, then in the 7th year you shall let him go free from you. And when you send him away from you, you shall not let him go away empty-handed. You shall supply him liberally from your flock, from your threshing floor, and from your winepress. From what the Lord has blessed you with, you shall give to him. And some atheist told me I was whitewashing slavery in the Bible. What a joke. But suppose a master did abuse his slaves, and those slaves decided to run away. In Deuteronomy 23:15 through 16, God made it unlawful for runaway slaves to be returned to their masters. The verses state, you shall not give back to his master the slave who has escaped from his master to you. He may dwell with you in your midst, in the place which he chooses within one of your gates, where it seems best to him. You shall not oppress him. Some wanted to become slaves. Men served as slaves to earn their wife in biblical times, because a payment was expected for a man to take a wife. Just read about how Jacob earned Rachel and Leah in Genesis 29. Servants even wanted to remain under their master. Exodus 21:3 through 6. If he comes in by himself, he shall go out by himself. If he comes in married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master has given him a wife, and she has borne him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out by himself. But if the servant plainly says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free. Then his master shall bring him to the judges. He shall also bring him to the door, or to the doorpost, and his master shall pierce his ear with an awl, and he shall serve him forever. Also, it could be said that Jesus was pierced to earn Israel as his bride. And as for the slave, if you were a slave and you got married, then you better be prepared to stay as long as she was a servant. If you were a bad dad, then I guess you would leave. Jesus Christ is represented as a servant and served as one in the New Testament. Servanthood in the Old Testament foreshadowed Jesus being a servant who was bought with 30 pieces of silver, the cost of a slave. Exodus 21 says, 21:32, if the ox gores a male or female servant, he shall give to their master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned. As prophesied in Zechariah 11:13, and the Lord said to me, throw it to the potter, that princely price they set on me. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw them into the house of the Lord for the potter. This was fulfilled later in Matthew 27:9. Now keep in mind, all prophecies of the Bible, at least prophesied from the Old Testament to the New, we know that the Old Testament was fully written and even translated into Greek, called the Septuagint, by at least 200 BC, 200 years before Christ. And then Christ lived and fulfilled many of the prophecies. Something that is just inexplicable, with the Bible being written over a period of 1600 years and by different authors in different places, different times, unless, of course, it was inspired by God. Jesus was a servant. Acts 3:26. To you first, God, having raised up his servant, Jesus, sent him to bless you, and turning away every one of you from your iniquities. And what debt did Jesus have to pay? My sin debt and yours. That is, he took the just punishment for the evil we have done. We just have to confess his name to receive everlasting life through him. Romans 10:9 says that if you confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, you will be saved.